Yeah, I'll pull that up. So far we've been in contact with the National Weather Service. There's no tornado that's been confirmed on the ground yet, but we are still watching these strong storms rapidly moving across Calcasieu and Cameron parishes. So I'm going to take the animation out of loop here. I'm going to pause it. Let me get some of this information off the screen, and I'm going to bring up our one of the products we use to track debris. So let me do that again. For at least Calcasieu and Cameron Parish, we're tracking the storm now entering southwest Calcasieu Parish, just south of the Carless vicinity. And if I bring up that product, thankfully this is what we use to track whether or not we see any debris. There seems to be no signs of that right now, Joseph. But it is still a very strong storm. I'll bring up the storm again here and do another track, a bit of a wider zoom here.
It's been looking pretty good, at least for more northern parishes at the moment, though we are still looking at those two warnings. Max laying out a larger track for us here. Now, it does look like we've got some pretty solid coverage across the area. Most of our region seeing it closer to Westlake a little bit later this morning, but that's going to be closer to around 6:45 to maybe 7 a.m. But right now, it does look like it's still seeing the frequent lightning regardless of those rotating storms. We do want to emphasize again, even if you're not seeing a tornado on the ground, we still have 65-mile-per-hour winds in several areas. Certainly capable of doing some damage to siding and anybody caught outdoors, as well as the potential for hail in most of these systems. So you're going to want to take shelter if you're anywhere in the path of these storms, particularly for these warnings we're looking at a little bit further to the south here right now. Some of the area that has gotten storm reports has been mostly from earlier this morning that has to do with flooding and the potential for wind damage in many areas. But we're going to take a closer look at those tornado warnings again. Haven't seen a change to it, although we are getting more severe thunderstorm warnings extended for much of the area. You can see that covers almost the entirety of Cameron now, the entirety of Jeff Davis, as well as Calcasieu, the southern half of Allen Parish, and the southern half of Beauregard. Frequent lightning, a primary concern with this, and it looks like the flash flood warnings for now are being contained a little bit further off to the north for northern parts of Beauregard and as well as Vernon parishes. That's where you're mostly dealing with the heavy rainfall. But further to the south, most of us dealing with the potential for those gusty winds and heavy damaging winds at that. We are going to take another look here at that rotation product for velocity, which we can use to make out whether or not there is an active tornado in the area. Helps give us a clear idea on rotation.
Joseph, so something I'm going to do, since it looks a little messy here, is I'm actually going to take the Lake Charles radar off to see if we can get a better view of the where the rotation actually is. So just hang with me for a second. But you can also see another tornado warning that's been issued for basically now eastern Calcasieu, Cameron, and into Jeff Davis parishes. Joseph?
Yes, that's right, Max. That one has been issued to last a little bit longer than the one further to the south. Now, as far as actual rotation couplets, we're not seeing too much evidence here. There is some slight rotation just south of the Carless area, but further to the north, it doesn't look like they'll be dealing with that quite as much with that second tornado warning. So that is a good sign. Looks promising towards not seeing tornadic activity in the area. However, we are still going to be dealing with, again, the potential for those damaging winds. Those are gusting as high as 65 miles per hour. That can certainly do some damage if you are outdoors, and you're going to want to keep that out of the path of that storm and in a shelter if you can. That's also active now, and we'll be taking a look as well a little bit further to the north. We do have that second tornado or third tornado warning, like Max mentioned, just outside of Grand Lake there. That covers parts of Cameron as well as eastern Calcasieu and all the way into Jeff Davis, extending from just to the east or just to the west of Grand Lake all the way through Bell City. That tornado warning is going to be active in a similar fashion to the one further north till about 7 a.m. this morning, and it looks like that's going to be an extension of the first one that was issued. Max?
Yeah, and Joseph, I have a mic on now, so hopefully everybody at home can hear me. But I do want to share an update from the National Weather Center, where in addition to the tornado warnings we have in effect, and it's basically for the same cells we are watching across parts of Calcasieu and Cameron parishes, eventually about to make its way into the lake area and into Jeff Davis. But we did get an update from the National Weather Service where the storms are moving east at 65 miles an hour, and they are capable of wind gusts in excess or upwards of nearly 80 miles an hour. That's possible. So even if there's not a tornado on the ground, you are going to want to take shelter, treat this as if there is a tornado on the ground, find that safest place in your home, put yourself between as many walls from the outside of your home to yourself as possible, maybe even get a helmet or a pillow in case a tornado actually does form. But again, these winds, even if there's no tornado, are very strong. So we're expecting severe weather to continue throughout Calcasieu Parish into Cameron and eventually into Jeff Davis Parish within the next half hour to hour, maybe longer.
And that is something we have been trying to remind you folks of as well, is just because there is no rotation doesn't mean there's no risk of damage. Straight line winds, like Max said, is pushing in excess of 85 miles per hour in a few places, both within these tornado warnings and within the severe thunderstorm warnings, as well as frequent lightning. You do not want to be outside in this right now. If you are seeing this and you're waiting to go out the door to work can wait. Your safety is most important. And we are seeing the potential for hail with these systems as well. So take shelter in an interior room if you can, on the first floor of a building if possible. A lot of this thunder is actually getting very close to the studio, and hopefully we won't lose power here. But we will keep talking anyway, just in case we are still able to broadcast. Now, as for these warnings are still active, we haven't seen any of them lifted yet. We're going to zoom out a little bit here to the bigger picture real quick. Now, it is a little hard to see with all of the lightning products in the area. That gives you an idea of just how heavy the coverage of all these thunderstorms has been, even outside of those tornado warnings. Now, further to the north, it looks like you're mostly dealing with just some flash flood warnings for Vernon and northern Beauregard parishes, though there is still plenty of heavy thunderstorm activity, especially pushing in from the southwest. Now, further to the south is when that's been picking up for the rest of us. Almost area-wide now, there's only a few spots that don't have these active, are severe thunderstorm warnings, where we're seeing those push east at about 65 miles per hour. We're seeing wind gusts up to 85 miles per hour or more in some cases, and in some areas that's without rotation, without a confirmed tornado on the ground. Straight line winds can still do a lot of damage, and that has triggered tornado warnings in a few areas on top of those severe thunderstorm warnings. If you look a little bit further to the south here, we do have several tornado warnings issued for parts of southern Calcasieu into northern Cameron, all the way into parts of Jeff Davis Parish as well. Looks to be an extension of that same warning, though still, this is such a dense squall line moving through that we could see several opportunities for rotation pop up in different cells, and many of these cells are capable of hail as well. So make sure you are taking shelter if you're in the path of this storm. It does look like it's just past Cove School, and areas further to the southwest of Carlis should be a little clear of that threat by now, but already it's starting to move over areas in Big Lake and Grand Lake, getting closer to Lake Charles itself, and plenty of lightning. Do not be outside in this storm. If you can take shelter indoors, do so immediately until that has passed over the area. Max?
Yeah, and Joe, while we're on the topic here of how fast it's moving, I'm going to actually do an updated storm track again for a wider zoom here. Can make out the storm is making its way across Calcasieu and Cameron parishes. So again, because it's moving very fast, I'm going to do a wider zoom out here and get an updated idea of where the arrival times for the storm are likely to be. So we'll do that. And we can see, again, it's moving very fast. So around 6:45, it's going to be near the Reeves vicinity, 6:46 near Iowa. So that's within the next 10 minutes. So in anywhere and anyone in those locations, you need to be getting into your safe place basically as soon as you can. You already should be doing that if you're here in the lake area, as it's about to move overhead within the next couple of minutes if it's not doing already. And it's going to continue to quickly move off to the east over into Jeff Davis Parish and maybe even Allen Parish as well. So Jennings will be near your neck of the woods around 7:15 and likely beginning to push out of our area, at least with these arrival times after that. So again, we still have ways to go, probably at least another hour or two before it fully pushes out. So again, anywhere you're in the path here, which is basically involving much of basically all of eastern Cameron Parish, eastern and central Calcasieu Parish, Jeff Davis Parish, and even into southern Allen parishes, again, you definitely will want to be getting into your safe place as soon as you can.
Yeah, absolutely so. And just a reminder as well, even outside of these tornado warnings and away from this major squall line, you can see they've issued some more tornado warnings a little bit further off to the east of us. That's more not in our area, that's just north of Crowley, but it's separate in the severe thunderstorms that we're seeing push in out of the south away from this major squall line. So even if you're not directly in this area, you still want to make sure you're keeping a close eye for alerts in your local region, because the potential for severe weather is still there with any thunderstorms that do form, even if it's not from this same source. And within this, aside from the gusty damaging winds, which again, we're seeing it produce gusts up to 85 miles per hour or higher, and that's easily enough to do damage even without the rotation you would typically see in a tornado. Fortunately, it doesn't look like we've had a tornado confirmed on the ground anywhere yet, and we're not seeing much on our debris products, which is a good sign so far. And Max, go ahead, what you got for us?
Yeah, I just want to interrupt. This was before, so we've been tracking the storm for a while. It originated over southeast Texas and eventually has made its way into southwest Louisiana. So while we are still waiting on any sort of damage reports, here in southwest Louisiana, we have gotten a report from our partners at the National Weather Service and other partners in the chat service we use, that there may have been reports of damage over in Port Arthur, again, as the system was getting going in southeast Texas. So that potential is definitely there, where we could get definitely some of those strong damaging winds to produce damage here in southwest Louisiana. And again, that's even if there's not a tornado. So you don't need a tornado to produce, again, these heavy straight line winds. So even again, if there's not a tornado or your specific location is not in a tornado warning, I think anyone basically in eastern Calcasieu, eastern Cameron, Jeff Davis Parish, you have to get into your safe place as soon as you can. That's also my phone going off, and as a reminder, that's a good way of getting alerts. You want to have your notifications on. You can get alerts with the First Alert weather app that will alert you in the event even more of these warnings are issued. And definitely keep your phones off of silent mode. Keep them so that you can actually hear these alerts, since I would imagine there are more on the way.
Yes, absolutely. And we did just have another tornado warning issued that covers parts of Calcasieu and Jeff Davis parishes. That's now active until about 7:15 this morning. And then you can see that covers the area all the way from Lake Charles to Jennings. So seeing more issues in areas of interest pop up along this squall line. But again, like Max said, even outside these tornado warnings, we're dealing with a very large system here of heavy thunderstorms and damaging winds. The lowest I've seen in some of these severe thunderstorms warning has been them traveling at about 45 miles per hour. At the upper end, we're looking at damaging gusts close to 85 miles per hour or in excess of that in some areas. That's definitely enough to do some damage, even if you're not seeing tornado rotation, which some of these thunderstorms, while it's not producing a funnel on the ground, are still rotating, and that also does mean hail. Here's a look at the wind velocity in storms, which we used to see if there is any signs of that. It does look like there might be a bit of a rotation couplet here just to the northwest of Highway 397, and that's right on Ward Line Road there as well. And there might be some rotation here. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a funnel on the ground. However, that does present an increased risk for hail, and even without the spin, you're still looking at wind gusts pushing in excess of 65 to 85 miles per hour. You're going to want to be inside. Don't go outside in this weather. Seek shelter immediately if you are in the path of this storm. Right now, this rotation couplet looks like it's for parts of Calcasieu and moving into to Jeff Davis within the next couple of minutes here. This is right in the Robinson Road area, just to the east of Highway 397 and Ward Line Road right there, just to the southwest of Homewood and approaching on Lionel Road. So again, if you are in the path of any of these storms, if we want to zoom out a little bit and look at the rest of the area here, we're dealing with quite a wide system this morning, not just on velocity products, but as far as wind, we are keeping an eye out for any clearer signs of rotation that might be indicative of a tornado trying to touch down on the ground here. But you can see all the warnings we're dealing with this morning. Almost the entirety of our parishes, with the exceptions of some further up in Beauregard and Vernon, are dealing with severe thunderstorm warnings. That includes the risk of frequent lightning, hail up to 2 inches in diameter in some areas, especially where we see rotation in those storms, and wind gusts pushing 65 to even 85 miles per hour. It does not take a tornado to cause wind damage or cause a danger to you, so make sure you are seeking shelter if you're in the path of any of these storms, or even in any of these severe thunderstorm warnings. Outside of a tornado, it does not matter. The weather is still there, even if you're not in a warning box particularly. So take shelter if you are in these tornado warning areas, inside an interior room if possible, on the first floor of a building if possible. And like Max said, another good tip, maybe if you can, wear a bike helmet or have a pillow handy just in case if you are in the danger of these systems. As we're going to be seeing these continue for a while now, let's take a look at that storm report's prediction. It does look like, as far as storm estimates, we will be dealing with this moving right now, right on top of the Lake Charles through to Quincy area, and Grand Lake is about the back to middle line of where this squall line is extending through. Here's a look at the bigger picture here. Again, further to the north, most of what you're dealing with is that frequent lightning and heavy rainfall, seeing flash flood warnings that have been active since very early this morning. As far as it goes for Beauregard and Vernon parishes, it's extending into some of Jeff Davis as well. Those flash flood warnings popping in more as we continue to see in excess of 3 inches of rainfall for areas further to the northwest. Now to the south is where we're dealing with most of these storm warnings. Heavy thunderstorms producing frequent lightning. You're going to want to be indoors. If you're just taking a look at the weather and you're waiting to head out the door, don't head out yet. Your safety is more important than being a little bit late for work. And otherwise, it does look like this squall line is moving fairly quickly. And last we looked at the speed estimates, it was moving east at about 65 miles per hour, 45 in the slowest parts, and we are seeing wind gusts in excess of 85 miles per hour at times. Max pulling up a new speed estimate for us on this system. It looks like it'll be in the Bell City Fenton area, closer to 650 this morning, more in Jennings, closer to 7 to 710, and by then it should be pushing a little bit further towards Acadia, a little bit out of our region by 7 to 8 o'clock, and we're likely to see plenty of rounds of rain and maybe a few thunderstorms popping up behind this, but this is going to be the primary concern for severe weather this morning. We've seen several tornado warnings issued that encompass the southern half of Beauregard Parish, almost the entirety of Jefferson Davis, as well as eastern Calcasieu and the more northern parts of Cameron Parish, all showing signs of rotation in some of these storms. Wind gusts from 65 to 85 miles per hour. This will include a risk of hail, frequent lightning, damaging winds. Make sure you are taking shelter if you are in the path of any of these storms. I can hear the wind whistling outside at the station right now, and there is plenty of lightning along with it. This is not something that you want to be outside in if you can help it. And again, take shelter in an interior room, away from as many windows and as inside of any interior walls as you can manage, and try to be on the first floor of the building if that is at all possible. Now, I think Max has our rotation products up here. We're taking another look at whether we have any signs of any rotation. Max, what do you think?
Yeah, we definitely do. I'm going to pull up get a closer view. First, I'm going to take the storm track off the screen, and I really want to take a closer zoom into the cell we have moving across southern Calcasieu near the Bell City area and into northern Cameron Parish. So it's definitely, obviously, you have a lot going on here, a lot of heavy activity, a lot of lightning, so it's still indicating a very strong storm. And I do want to show that velocity product again And no, just off to the west of the Bell City area, we have some very strong winds being reported just to the east of the Homewood vicinity. I'm going to get kind of an idea of where these how strong the winds are, and unfortunately here this product isn't allowing me to display the winds on the screen here. However, off the screen it is coming up with a wind velocity of 97 miles an hour. That's 97 miles an hour, and that's very close to the ground too. This wind reading is close to the radar site, so the radar beam is picking up on returns that are just not far away from the ground at all. So even if we can't confirm any debris right now, certainly winds that strong do have a potential to create a lot of havoc and can certainly create a lot of damage. So again, if you are near the Bell City area and near Hayes, you need to be getting into that safe place right away. Remember, the safest place in your home, the sturdiest, away from windows, a closet or a bathroom, that would work very well. As Joseph and I have touched on, having a pillow or a bicycle or motorcycle helmet, that would be good too. Since even if right now, and we will look at debris in just a second, but even if we can't see anything on our debris products, which we'll pull up, certainly winds that strong would have that potential, a very great potential at that, to create damage. So again, anywhere from near the Bell City, the Hayes vicinity, near Niblett, Thornwell, into Jeff Davis Parish, this is heading your way. So you need to be getting into that safe place, ideally, as soon as you can.
And even while we're waiting to look at more debris products, we have a little bit of video from outside the station at how current conditions are looking. If we get a chance to cut to that real quick, you can see the heavy rain present in the area, those winds really whipping up. And even right at the station, we're not looking at the maximum winds we're seeing for other areas, but you can see it's really blowing by. We got plenty of frequent lightning outdoors. We're keeping an eye out for any further updates to local warnings, although it does look like we're in the middle to closer to the back end of this. You could really see how that's blowing along. Again, you're seeing gusts as high as 65 to 85 to some of those areas we're looking at near Bell City, almost 100 miles per hour in some areas. Keeping a very close eye on any updates to that tornado warning. But right now, it looks like while we're seeing very high wind speeds and some rotation, we haven't had any reports of funnels on the ground, which is good news. And as far as debris detection goes, it doesn't look like we're seeing too much pop up here. There might be a little bit of debris being blown around just off to the east of Wesley Fruge Road there, a little further to the south of Bell City, but it's nothing too significant to indicate that we are seeing a funnel, especially with the track it is expected to take. Here's a look at those wind velocity products, and again, this is the strongest part we're seeing in there, and that is showing signs indicated on radar of wind gusts up to 97 miles per hour just off to the northwest of Bell City there. So make sure if you are in this area further to the south of Lacassine approaching Highway 101 that you are taking shelter immediately until this storm has passed your area, because even without rotation, straight line winds gusting up to 85 to almost 100 miles per hour is certainly enough to do some damage, and definitely something you don't want to be outside in. Remember to take shelter in an interior room if you can, away from as many windows and doors as possible, and on the first floor of a building if that is something that is available to you. Here's the latest update to that wind product. Again, it's pretty much just due north of Bell City now, still seeing those very large wind gusts and some potential rotation as well, so we could be seeing a tornado. Fortunately, it doesn't look like we've had any reports of it being on the ground, but you still want to exercise increased caution. That's just coming up on Foreman's Hall further off to the northwest, and it looks like that's going to stay active in these warnings until about 7:15 this morning. Most of the area, we're going to back up really quickly and take an overall look at what we've got across the region. Right now, we're seeing not too much activity further to the north. The main thing we're concerned with is this squall line at the moment that keeps producing these tornado warnings due to that potential rotation and those very high winds that comes with the risk of hail and, of course, frequent lightning. This morning, we've already seen hail up to 2 inches in diameter in a few places. You don't want to be outside. Take shelter immediately if you are in the path of these storms. Max, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I'll interject here with a couple of things. So I've been looking at data from the Lake Charles Regional Airport, and even at the airport, we've seen seemingly have had gusts over 60 miles an hour. So these winds are seem to be pretty spreading over a pretty far amount of area, pretty large area across southwest Louisiana. The other thing I do want to mention real quick is that we still do have a tornado warning in effect for basically southwestern Allen Parish. I know we haven't been talking about it a ton, but it still is out there. It's out for around 7 o'clock, so you can make out the squall line, which is still part of the overall squall line we have been watching, making its way now through the Reeves vicinity, quickly moving off to the north and west. It'll be pretty much near the Kinder area and eventually near Highway 165, I would say within the next 20 or so minutes. So I do want to bring up a velocity scan to see if there's any rotation here. And the good news is, actually right now we're switching in between radars. So right here, this is from the Fort Johnson radar off to the north. But there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of rotation, at least with this. Now, I do want to stress that, again, even if there's no rotation, even if there's not a tornado, I do still think winds here are strong enough where certainly they would have the potential to produce some damage. So I will do another bit of a storm track, but for this part of the cell here, and let me do a bit of a zoom out here and get that information on the screen. So basically this line extends from almost really into northeastern Beauregard Parish into Allen and now northern Jeff Davis. So if I do a storm track here, here's a look at some of the arrival times. This part of the line is going to be near the Kinder area around 6:58. Again, that's really within the next 5 minutes or so, which means you need to be in that safe place right now, or again, getting there as soon as you could be. Sugartown, it's going to be in your vicinity near the around 7:01. Further off to the north and to the east, it'll be near the Oakdale vicinity at 7:25, and around 7:30, this part of the line should begin to be moving out of southwest Louisiana. But again, I do want to stress that even if there's not a tornado with this, I do still think winds are strong enough where certainly that has the potential to produce some damage.
That's absolutely so the case. And remember as well, we're seeing lots of little storms within this larger squall line show signs of rotation. And even when that doesn't mean a tornado on the ground, that does increase your risk for hail. And that does mean very large gusty winds in the area. And like Max said earlier, we haven't been talking a whole lot about other areas outside of these tornado warnings. But even within those severe thunderstorm warnings, you're seeing wind gusts push up to 65 miles per hour or higher. In a few areas within the tornado warnings, we've seen gusts up to 85, even 97 miles per hour in a few spots. So you definitely want to be taking shelter, not just if you're in a tornado warning, but if you are in any of these larger severe thunderstorm warnings, which are covering all of our parishes, except for a few parts of Allen, Beauregard, and Vernon a little bit further to the north. And even those are seeing a few storm cells that are capable of producing rotation, even if it's not something that's actively showing across the entire area. Now, if we look at the larger picture here on radar, we're going to see a bit of a stalled product, but there we go. You can see just how big of an area all these warnings are covering. Frequent lightning, even outside of the wind. There's a lot of different concerns here, and each one of them on their own are enough that you're going to want to take shelter. If you were taking a look at your forecast, trying to see if you can head out the door to work, you're going to want to wait. It's going to be a little bit longer before this moves over. Zooming in a little bit, you can see that the main band of that squall line is pushing pretty quickly off to the east, leaving lots of rain behind it. It does look like the bulk of it has just barely passed over Lake Charles. That first tornado warning that we saw earlier in parts of Calcasieu Cameron has been lifted. It's passing on to this warning now that's just being issued for the northern part of Jeff Davis Parish, and it looks like that's going to be active a little bit longer, closer to 7:15 or 7:30 this morning, as we continue to track multiple cells within this squall line that are showing signs of rotation. And again, while that doesn't necessarily mean a tornado on the ground, look at this on the wind velocity. It's still producing really large gusts here. That's just to the southeast of Lacassine, just barely, maybe a block northeast of Verret School Road. And so that's going to be producing wind gusts as high as 97 miles per hour we've seen out of these wind gusts. And that's a little, or in the Iowa region, just off to the southwest of Welsh and Abel Road. So make sure you are taking shelter, especially, we're talking about a lot of areas this morning, but these are the largest wind gusts we're seeing at the moment. If you're just south of Lacassine Highway 90, you're going to want to take shelter immediately due to the high winds and the frequent lightning potential for hail there, especially when the wind picks up. In in an interior room as far away from any windows as doors you can. Like Max has been saying, make sure you have that safe space and you're moving into it as quickly as you can until this has passed over your area. Now, the good news is, if we zoom out, that this has been moving very quickly. Most of this system is past the central parts of Calcasieu and almost completely past the central parts of Cameron Parish, and is now moving into Jeff Davis, Allen, and the eastern parts of Cameron Parish. Now, those tornado warnings being reissued for areas further down the line where those cells are still showing signs of rotation. It does look like the entire system should be mostly free of our area by a little after 7 a.m. Then it'll be mostly western portions. But for now, you're still going to want to make sure you are sheltered and in a safe area for a little while. We're going to take a little quick look at debris products as well to see if we can find any signs of that showing. Maybe if a tornado has been tracking through the area. It looks like we might be seeing a little bit of debris in some spots, but that's most likely due to those very high winds. Again, even outside of tornadoes in rotation, we're still seeing extreme damaging wind gusts. Most of the area is subject to at least 45-mile-per-hour winds within those severe thunderstorm warnings, easily seeing gusts across the area up to 65, and in a few spots we've seen them as high as 85 to even almost 100 miles per hour in a couple microbursts with these straight line winds that can cause a lot of damage. You want to be inside and seeking shelter if you're under any of these warnings. And again, even outside of those tornado warnings, you're going to want to make sure that you're keeping a close eye on your alerts and your weather app if you have it, or any alerts from the National Weather Service, because outside of tornado warnings, you still have these severe thunderstorms warnings. It looks like they have been rescinded for the most part for our western edge. So most of you should be in the clear there, that you will still be dealing with rain and thunder for the next couple hours. The main threat of those severe storms has moved on. It's now the rest of us in central to eastern areas that are dealing with it. But even if you're outside of these tornado warnings, you could still be seeing damaging wind gusts pushing 60 to 80 miles per hour. And that's enough to do quite a lot of damage to siding. That's even enough to flip a small trailer. So make sure that you are seeking shelter in that safe space as soon as you can until the warnings have been lifted for your local area. Right now, it looks like the middle line of that squall is just reaching Kinder and Jennings, just barely starting to pull out of Lake Charles. And the Oakdale area has been seeing its own storms, but will likely be touching the northern tip of that squall line as well. Here's a look at wind velocity, where we're keeping an eye out for rotation couplets. It looks like there might be a slight trace of one just to the south of Kinder. We're seeing some bigger signs of them closer to in between Church Point and Opelousas, but that's a little further out of our area. Right now, it's the area just to the east of Fenton we're taking a closer look at. You can see here the difference between winds blowing away and towards the radar station. That kind of gives us a sign, an indication that there is a rotation in that area, which could be indicative of a tornado, though not necessarily a guarantee that one is on the ground. We use a couple of products to try and identify that, and as well as ground reports. And fortunately, we have not seen many reports indicting that there is definitely a tornado on the ground in the area. However, rotating cell system still means an increased risk for hail and, of course, those damaging gusty winds, which is the primary reason that many of these warnings are being issued, is we're seeing lots of independent rotating cells. As you see, we just had that tornado warning lifted for that area further to the north, so that includes southern portions of Allen as well as Beauregard and a little chunk of northeastern Calcasieu Parish. If I pull that over here real quick, fortunately you see that area a little bit further away has been released from that tornado warning. You can see that was just north of Lake Charles. Now the only one left in our viewing area is that one covering most of Jeff Davis Parish. That's good news for most of you who were under those warnings, though we still want you to exercise caution if you are outdoors. You don't want to be outside if you can help it. Let's take a quick look at most of the area here. Again, even with those tornado warnings gone, severe thunderstorm warnings remain in effect. And we're going to remain on the air a little bit longer here, just until at least this tornado warning has lifted that's covering Jeff Davis Parish. It looks like that's going to be active until about 7:15 this morning. And again, with this squall line, it's been producing frequent lightning. We've seen hail up to 2 inches in a few places, wind gusts pushing close to 100 miles per hour in a few areas. Make sure that you are seeking shelter if you are in these path of this storm. We're going to check in with Max really quickly.
Yeah, I do want to interject here a little bit. When we talk about some of these wind gusts, a lot of the times these will be what we call radar indicated. So that means what the radar is picking up on. Whether all of that actually reaches the ground is something we'll have to look at after the fact. But still, certainly there are some of those strong winds now beginning to really push into Jeff Davis and Eastern Cameron Parish, Eastern Allen Parish. You can see all of that here. And I'm going to do another storm track again to give an idea of some of the arrival times first. And it's still moving very quickly, around 65 miles an hour, so it'll be near the Oakdale area around 7:15. Bazille, basically over your area now, and eventually it is going to start pushing into Acadia and Evangeline parishes, maybe near the Lafayette area around 7:49. So if you do have any family or friends over in those vicinities, just outside of our viewing area, again, Acadia, Evangeline parishes, Lafayette, you may just want to give them a call or text, say, hey, this is coming your way. Just again, give them a heads up. And as a reminder, you can get any weather alerts again on the First Alert Weather app, though we always encourage you to have multiple ways to receive those warnings. And also, while we are talking about some of this activity, Joe, let me bring up Skycam. I'm going to change it to the Jennings one. Just let's see, get an idea of what's going on outside. So here's a look at Jennings. You can see the rain may not really be falling, at least heavily quite yet, but that's basically on the doorstep, and you can see quite a few of those lightning flashes out in the distance. So I would imagine that over any time between now and basically the next 5 to 10 minutes or so, that we are going to start seeing some of those winds pick up drastically. So again,
we did see those earlier as well, because we had a live video outside of the station. We'll see if any of that is still coded and they can pull it up. If not, we're still looking at Jennings, but it is a little bit quieter out there here in Lake Charles. You can see it's still pretty windy, still dealing with the frequent lightning, but the gusts aren't whipping by quite as much as they were earlier. Now, some of this footage is from a little earlier this morning, and you can see that was really blowing by. Now, this is the type of activity that you're about to be seeing in Jennings in pretty short order here. Here's another look at the Skycam. Again, we're just kind of keeping an eye out. We're seeing plenty of lightning flashes out there, likely to see the wind picking up soon as well. If you are waiting to see if you can make your morning commute this morning, you're going to want to wait a little while, close to half an hour, for that storm to blow over your area.